Hello YouTube, Salivate Metal here with some news about gold, and it's reached above $1,300 an ounce briefly today, and palladium has climbed 3.6% for the week, and that comes after news that the United States Mint will distribute for the very first time the Palladium Eagle, and those will hit the resellers, many bullion dealers in September, as I mentioned in a prior video. But the news here, it really is about how gold has touched its highs today here at $1,300, which is a psychological level, and it broke through that barrier today briefly, mainly on account of news of a terrorist attack in Barcelona, Spain. And actually, there were several attacks in Barcelona, and we heard about a knife attack in Finland today as well. So I think that brought about some fears because we really haven't heard of a major terrorist attack in quite a while. And it just goes to show you that we must continue to be diligent, because ISIS and Islamic extremism and terrorism is still a major threat. And so hopefully we can do what we can around the world to unite against this threat and against this senseless murder. But nonetheless, we did see that gold touch their highest intraday level of the year on Friday, temporarily topping $1,300 an ounce before pulling back to settle lower for the session and the week. The sell-off is unusual, as there was no data or market news to account for the roughly $15 drop from the day's highs, says Mark O'Brien, research director at Goldcore. And it's quite interesting, that statement, because our very own Angel P. Music, who hasn't posted a while on my channel, predicted this rise above $1,300 earlier in the morning today, and promised that it would be at that level. But because there was no data or market news to account for the drop, he had no way to really know that was going to drop. But basically, according to Mark O'Brien, the risk aversion has eased with stocks eking out small gains at the time of gold settlement, and some traders may have decided to take profits at the $1,300 level, causing the small dip there, $15. Gold had traded above $1,300 on Friday for the first time in 2017, getting a lift from haven demand on the back of earlier weakness on global equities and a terrorist attack, which I mentioned earlier, in Barcelona, and concerns about President Donald Trump's pro-business agenda. And I'll stop there because we've seen the councils that Donald Trump had, these councils for business, basically disband over comments that he made about the attacks in Charlottesville, Virginia. And the thing about it is, if you read his statements, he's condemned all kinds of racism, no matter what form it takes, and he condemned the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia. So it's really been blown up by the media because they think that he is being somehow sensitive or adhering to the white supremacists, and that's not how I took it at all. He's condemning it all kinds of, and racism of any form is awful, and violence in any form is awful. But free speech is important, and but nonetheless, because of that and concerns of the media, there has been a question about the agenda, and will it be rocked by this and other things as well. Not only that, but there's also tax cuts. There's the repeal of the ACA that was not able to get done. So there's some real fear there that the agenda may not be able to be much more difficult to get it through, which is causing some legitimate concerns there. Talking about December gold at 16% loss, fell 80 cents or no less than 1% to settle at $12.91.60 an ounce. It had touched a high of $13.06 an ounce on Friday, a level not seen since early November, according to FactSet data. The pullback in the yellow metal fueled a 2% weekly loss. And so, yeah, just again, it kind of confirms what Angel P. Music had posted, that we did see it go up above $1,300 briefly. we may see it revisit that next week. We'll just have to wait and see. And silver's hanging in there. September silver edged down 5.3 cents or 0.3% to end at $17 an ounce for a weekly loss of 4%. But it's hanging in there. A flight to assets perceived in a safe had been underpinned by Thursday's sell-off in equities, and highlighted by the worst downdraft by the Dow Jones Industrial Average at a negative 0.35%, and the S&P index down 8.18% since May 17th. The terrorist attacks in Spain reminded investors of the need to hedge their portfolios against geopolitical risk, said Maxwell Gold, director of the investment strategy at ETF Securities. And that just goes to show you, yes, geopolitics play a role, and that's where the whole black swan thing can come into event. And also, domestic politics plays a role. As mentioned in the next statement here, Trump's domestic behavior is making investors nervous about how he will handle delicate foreign issues, even though talk of firing nuclear missiles in North Korea has eased, he said, comments emailed Friday. And that's just it. And that's the thing. I've learned a lot about Donald Trump, since the primaries. I was a Ted Cruz supporter. And obviously, even to this day, some of the things that Donald Trump says, yes, he's bombastic, and he's personal. In some ways, he has thin skin, even though he's a fighter. And some of the things he says, some of the personal attacks, I don't agree with. But the way he's handling race issues in this country, I think, is to be admired. He's condemning white supremacists. He's condemning the anyone who has any kind of hate or against any other race, and I think that should be admirable. Should be recognized as such. The attack in Charlottesville itself is reminiscent of ISIS and how they have killed people. Because when it talked about the selling in equities, and mentioned this article on Thursday after a van plowed into crowds in one of the Barcelona's tourist venues, killing at least 14 people and injuring scores. And Islamic State has claimed responsibility. And that's the same type of attack that was done in Charlottesville. In Charlottesville, Virginia, a vehicle plowed through counter-protesters, people protesting against the KKK, white supremacists, and neo-Nazis, innocent, and that particular group was peaceful. And it was a killing of an innocent person in the name of Hitler. This guy who did it was a terrorist. In my view, he was a terrorist. And I'm glad that Donald Trump had recognized it as such, that it was a terrorist attack in the mode of how ISIS had been doing it in Western Europe for quite some time now. There's no difference in terrorism and hate. And he called it out as such, as he should have. And the problem is how our domestic media is handling this issue, and everything. It's hurting Trump's agenda, unfortunately. In that second press conference, he wanted to talk about infrastructure, and if there was a chance that an infrastructure bill could be passed, even though it's massive government spending, it's at least it's some progress, and you would think that would have some effect on the market. So I think a lot of these different issues are coming into play here, and this is where the rubber meets the road. We have the economy, politics, and it's amazing how all these different things, issues that you would think have nothing to do with precious metals, can affect precious metals. And whenever there's any kind of uncertainty, such as we see, and Steve Bannon has been fired from the White House, and this article talks about that. And some are suggesting that Steve Bannon's sacking and exit from the Trump presidency is a reason for gold's fall. This may be the case, but ironically, Bannon's exit shows the complete mess that is the Trump White House, and this will support gold and should lead to gold challenging $1,400 later this year. And that's just it. I think this is a strategy that Kelly, who was hired as the chief of staff for the White House is working to reform the White House and actually bringing order instead of chaos, that this article is suggesting. And it just goes to show you, yes, it's been pretty volatile there, the White House, with the different people coming in. But you think about it, these are not politicians, and really, for what it is just bringing order to a relatively chaotic situation. Steve Bannon, I was never really a huge fan of from the very beginning, although I don't know much about him. But nonetheless, probably a good move, and I'm hoping that we will see some stability there. But Trump is always an unknown entity, because he's going to say what's on his mind no matter what. I don't think that even Kelly can tame some of the things he says. But regardless, it's a time for Americans and for Europeans and everyone to really just to come together, and to come together and fight against all kinds of injustices in the world, such as white supremacy and terrorism. And because everybody should be seen as equal in God's eyes. But nonetheless, there it is. That's my rant, so to speak, about certain issues. But it's just pretty amazing how it can affect gold and silver and volatility. And we'll have to check out the volatility index in a later video. But nonetheless, that's where gold stands. And all of us can come together and realize that gold and silver as well, the precious metals, are a safe haven. They're a hedge. And so we will certainly use that to our advantage in times like these, although I think all of us would rather have a more stable environment and a place where we all can get along and respect each other. And because it would be better to have strong currencies and strong economies instead of a whirlwind and a chaos and drama. So post your thoughts below on this. We've covered a wide range of issues in this video, but post your thoughts about any and all of it below. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to y'all for watching. Encourage you to please rate, comment, and subscribe.